Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him in His presence daily.
The 19th of November, 1899, Volume 3, The Evils of Pride. My adorable Jesus continues to come. And since before he came, my mind was thinking about certain things which Jesus had told me in the past years, and which I do not remember so well. Almost to remind me, he told me, "My daughter, pride corrodes grace. In the hearts of the proud there is nothing but a void, all full of smoke, which produces blindness. Pride does nothing but render oneself an idol. So the proud soul does not have her God with her. By sin she has tried to destroy him in her heart, and raising an altar within her heart, she places herself on it, and she adores herself." Oh God, what an abominable monster this vice is. It seems to me that if the soul is attentive not to let it enter into herself, she is free of all other vices. But if, to her misfortune, she lets herself be dominated by it, since it is a monstrous and wicked mother, it will deliver all of its naughty children for her, which are the other sins. Ah, Lord, keep it away from me. End of the reading. The 19th of November 1903, Volume 6. While one is nothing, one can be all. Continuing in my usual state, I saw blessed Jesus in my interior, and a light in my intellect, saying, "While one is nothing, one can be all. But how? One becomes all through suffering. Suffering makes the soul become pontiff, priest, king, prince, minister, judge, advocate, repairer, protector, defender. And since true suffering is the suffering wanted by God in the soul, if the soul appeases herself completely in his volition, this appeasement, united to suffering, allows the soul to rule over justice, over the mercy of God, over men, and over all things. Now, just as suffering gave Christ all the most beautiful qualities and all the honours and offices that the human nature can contain, in the same way, by participating in the suffering of Christ, the soul participates in his qualities, in the honours and in the offices of Christ, who is the all. End of the reading. The 19th of November 1921, Volume 13. The two supports of Jesus in Gethsemane. In order to know the truths, it is necessary to have the will, the desire to know them. The truth is simple. I was keeping company with my Jesus, who was agonizing in the Garden of Gethsemane, and as much as I could, I compassionated him. I pressed him tightly to my heart, trying to wipe his mortal sweats. And my sorrowful Jesus, with faint and expiring voice, told me, "My daughter, my agony in the garden was hard and painful, maybe more painful than that of the cross. In fact, if that was the fulfillment and the triumph over all, here in the garden it was the beginning, and sufferings are felt more at the beginning than when they are ended. But in this agony the most harrowing pain was when all sins came before me one by one. My humanity comprehended all their enormity, and each crime carried the mark, death to a God, armed with sword to kill me. Before the divinity, sin appeared to me as so very horrifying and more horrible than death itself. Just in comprehending what sin means, I felt I was dying, and I did really die. I cried out to the Father, but he was inexorable. Not even one was there to help me, so as not to let me die. I cried out to all creatures to have pity on me, but in vain. So my humanity languished, and I was about to receive the last blow of death. But do you know who prevented the execution and sustained my humanity from dying? The first was my inseparable mamma. In hearing me ask for help, she flew to my side and sustained me, and I leaned my right arm on her. Almost dying, I looked at her, and I found in her the immensity of my will intact, without ever a break between my will and hers. My will is life, and since the will of the Father was immovable and death was coming to me from creatures, another creature who enclosed the life of my will gave me life. And here is my mamma, who in the portent of my will conceived me and gave me birth in time, now giving me life for the second time, to let me accomplish the work of redemption. Then I looked to my left, and I found the little daughter of my will. I found you, Louisa, as the first, followed by the other daughters of my will. Since I wanted my mamma with me as the first link of mercy through which we were to open the doors to all creatures, I wanted to lean my right arm on her, and I wanted you as the first link of justice to prevent it from unloading itself upon all creatures as they deserve. Therefore, I wanted to lean my left arm on you, so that you might sustain it together with me. With these two supports, I felt life come back to me, and, as if I had not suffered anything, with firm step I went to meet my enemies. In all the pains that I suffered during my passion, many of which were capable of giving me death, these two supports never left me, and when they saw me nearly dying with my own will which they contained, they sustained me, as though giving me many sips of life. O prodigies of my will, who can ever count them and calculate their value? This is why I love so much one who lives in my will. I recognize my portrait in her, my noble features. I feel my own breath, my voice, and if I did not love her, I would defraud myself. I would be like a father without offspring, without the noble cortege of his court, and without the crown of his children. And if I did not have the offspring, the court and the crown, how could I call myself a king? My kingdom is formed by those who live in my will, and from this kingdom I choose the mother, the queen, the children, the ministers, the army, the people. I am suffering everything for them, and they are all for me. Afterwards, I was thinking about what Jesus had told me, and I said to myself, how can this be put into practice? And Jesus, returning, added, my daughter, in order to know the truths, it is necessary to have the will, the desire to know them. Imagine a room in which the shutters are closed. No matter how much sun there may be outside, the room remains always in the dark. Now, opening the shutters means wanting light, but this is not enough if one does not take advantage of the light to reorder the room, dust it, and put himself to work so as not to kill the light which is given and become ungrateful. In the same way, it is not enough to have the will to know the truth if at the light of the truth which illuminates one does not try to dust himself of his own weaknesses, reorder himself according to the light of the truth he knows, and put himself to work together with the light of truth, making of it his own substance, in such a way that the light of the truth which he has absorbed may shine through his mouth, through his hands, through his bearing. It would be as if he killed the truth, and by not putting it into practice, it would be like remaining in total disorder before the light. Poor room full of light, but all messed up, upside down, in total disorder, with a person in it who does not take the care of reordering it. How pitiful would it not be? Such is one who knows the truths and does not put them into practice. However, know that simplicity enters into all truths as the first nourishment. If the truths were not simple, they would not be light, and they could not penetrate into human minds to enlighten them. And where there is no light, objects cannot be distinguished. Simplicity is not only light, but it is like the air that one breathes, which, though it cannot be seen, gives respiration to all. And if it wasn't for the air, the earth and everyone would remain without motion. Therefore, if the virtues, the truths, do not carry the mark of simplicity, they will be without light and without air. End of the reading. The 19th of November 1925, Volume 18. The divine will wants the company of the creature to be able to enrich her, instruct her, and give her the possession of the good which it makes known to her. I felt as though immersed in the immense sea of the Supreme Will, and I would have wanted, as my lovable Jesus tells me, to let nothing escape me of all the acts it has done, does, and will do, which for Jesus are one single act, and to be always with this divine will, in order to give it my little requital of love and of thanksgiving. I would have wanted to at least make a long note of all the acts of this Supreme Will, in order to admire and praise what it can do, and to be always with it, never leave it alone. But alas, my littleness is such that I get lost, and I don't know from what point to take it in order to follow it, because I find it everywhere, and always in the act of operating surprising things, both in the great and in the small things. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, coming out from my interior, told me, "Daughter of my holy will, one who is daughter must know what her father does. She must know what he possesses, and must be able to say to her father, what is yours is mine. If it is not so, it means that there isn't highest accord between father and daughter, or that maybe she is not a legitimate daughter of this father. In the same way, one who is a true daughter of my will must know what it does and the immense goods it possesses. To live in my will is precisely this, to keep company with all the acts which my will does. My will does not want to live isolated in the midst of creation, but wants the company of the creature, because it loves her so much, it maintains the order of the whole creation, and makes itself life of each thing. And when it finds a soul who keeps it company in this life which it maintains in the whole universe, my will rejoices, makes feast, and feels happy. It finds the one whom it loves, and by whom it is loved in return. It finds one to whom it can make itself known, and what it possesses, and in its happiness it narrates to the soul the secrets of its volition, its value, and its surprising effects. But this is nothing. As it narrates its knowledges, what it does and what it is, so it makes to her the donation of what it manifests to her. More than a valid script, it is knowledge itself that has impressed in the soul with characters of light the possession of the goods which the knowledge of it contains. Oh, how beautiful it is to see the sanctity, the power, the immensity of my will dwell with the littleness of the human will in the act in which it keeps it company. It wants to give always, it never stops. It wants to see the littleness beautiful, rich, powerful. It wants to keep it always close to itself, to be able to give to it always. There is nothing more beautiful, more gracious, more surprising to be seen than a soul who tries to follow the acts of the will of her Creator. There is a continuous contest between them, a reciprocal love, a continuous giving and receiving. Oh, if you knew how rich you are, as many things as you know about my will, so many goods do you possess. And if you enumerate them, you will get lost and will remain drowned within them. Therefore, be attentive in following the acts of my will, if you want to keep it continuous company. End of the reading. The 19th of November 1926, Volume 20. How the divine will is agonizing in the midst of creatures and how it wants to go out of this state. My always lovable Jesus, drawing me into his adorable will, made me see and feel the painful conditions in which the ingratitudes of creatures put him, and sighing with sorrow, he said to me, "My daughter, the pains of my divine will are unutterable and inconceivable to the human nature. My will is in all creatures, but it is in the nightmare of a terrible and harrowing agony, because instead of giving it dominion to let it carry out its life in them, they keep it repressed, giving it no freedom to act, to breathe, to palpitate. So the human will acts, it breathes freely, it palpitates as it wants, while mine is there only to serve it, to contribute to their acts and to remain within their acts, agonizing, suffocated by the rattle of and agony of long centuries. My will writhes inside the creatures in the nightmare of an agony so harrowing, and its writhings are the remorses of conscience, the disillusions, the setbacks, the crosses, the tiredness of life, and everything that can bother the poor creatures. Because it is right that since they keep a divine will crucified and always in the rattle of agony, the divine will would call them with its writhing, unable to do otherwise because it does not have dominion. Who knows whether, entering themselves and seeing the unhappiness that their bad will brings to them, they might give it a little breath, a respite from its harrowing agony. This agony of my will is so painful that my humanity, that wanted to suffer it in the Garden of Gethsemane, reached the point of seeking help from my very apostles, and even that I did not obtain. And the spasm was such that I sweated living blood, and feeling myself succumbing under the enormous weight of the agony of my divine will, so long and terrible, I invoked the help of my celestial Father, saying to him, "Father, if it is possible, let this chalice pass from me." In all the other pains of my passion, as atrocious as they were, I never said, "If it is possible, let this pain pass." On the contrary, on the cross I cried out, I thirst for pains." But in this pain of the agony of the supreme will, I felt all the weight of an agony so long, all the torment of a divine will that agonizes, that writhes in the human generations. What sorrow! There is no sorrow that can equal this. Now the supreme fiat wants to get out. It is tired, and at any cost it wants to get out of this agony so prolonged. And if you hear of chastisements, of cities collapsed, of destructions, this is nothing other than the strong writhing of its agony. Unable to bear it any longer, it wants to make the human family feel its painful state and how it writhes strongly within them, without anyone who has compassion for it. And making use of violence with its writhing, it wants them to feel that it exists in them, but it does not want to be in agony any more. It wants freedom, dominion. It wants to carry out its life in them. What disorder in society, my daughter, because my will does not reign. Their souls are like houses without order. Everything is upside down. The stench is so horrible, more than that of a putrefied cadaver. And my will, with its immensity, such that it is not given to it to withdraw even from one heartbeat of creature, agonizes in the midst of so many evils. And this happens in the general order of all. In the particular order, then, it is even more. In the religious, in the clergy, in those who call themselves Catholics, my will not only agonizes, but is kept in a state of lethargy, as if it had no life. Oh, how much harder this is. In fact, in the agony, at least I writhe, I have an outlet, I make myself heard as existing in them, even though agonizing. But in the state of lethargy, there is total immobility. It is the continuous state of death. And so only the appearances, the clothing of religious life can be seen, because They keep my will in lethargy. And because they keep it in lethargy, their interior is drowsy, as if the light, the good, were not for them. And if they do anything externally, it is empty of divine life, and it resolves into the smoke of vainglory, of self-esteem, of pleasing other creatures. And I and my supreme volition, while being inside, go out of their works. My daughter, what a front! How I would want everyone to feel my tremendous agony, the continuous rattle, the lethargy in which they put my will, because they want to do their own and not mine. They do not want to let it rain. They do not want to know it. And this is why it wants to burst its banks with its writhing, so that if they do not want to know it and receive it by ways of love, they may know it by way of justice. Tired of an agony of centuries, my will wants to get out, and therefore it prepared 2 ways: the triumphant way that are its knowledges, its prodigies, and all the good that the kingdom of the supreme fiat will bring, and the way of justice for those who do not want to know it as triumph. It is up to the creatures to choose the way in which they want to receive it. End of the reading. The 19th of November 1933, Volume 33. One who disposes herself to doing the divine will forms the passport, the way, the train. Jesus wants to remake himself in the creature, the celestial signer and motor. My celestial sovereign Jesus and my great lady, Queen of Heaven, come to my help. Place this rather ignorant little one in the midst of your most holy hearts. And while I write, my dear Jesus, act as my prompter, and my celestial mamma, as to her daughter, you guide my hand on the paper in a way that while I write, I will be in the midst of Jesus and of my mamma, so that not even one word more will I write of what they tell me and want. With this trust in my heart, I begin to write the 33rd volume. Perhaps it will be the last, but I do not know, although I have all the hope that the whole of heaven would have compassion on the little exiled one, and that soon they will repatriate her with them. But in the end, fiat, fiat. So I continued to think about the divine will, life and centre of my poor existence. And my sweet Jesus, repeating his transitory little visit, told me, my good daughter, you must know that as the soul disposes herself to doing my divine will, she forms the passport in order to enter into the interminable confines of the kingdom of the fiat. But do you know who lends you what is necessary in order to form it, and who lends itself to signing it, and to giving it the value of passage into my kingdom? Daughter, so great is the act of disposing oneself to doing my will, that my life itself, my merits, form the paper, the characters, and your Jesus makes the signature in order to make it known and to give her free entrance. One can say that the whole of heaven runs to the help of one who wants to do my will, and I feel so much love that I take a place in the fortunate creature, and I feel loved by her with my own will. Now, seeing myself loved by her with my own will, my love becomes jealous and does not want to lose even one breath, one heartbeat of the love of this creature. Imagine yourself my solicitudes, the defences that I take, the helps that I give, the loving stratagems that I use. In a word, I want to remake myself in her, and in order to remake myself, I venture myself in order to form another Jesus in the creature. Therefore I place all my divine art in order to obtain this intent. I do not spare anything. I do everything. I give everything. Where my will reigns, I cannot deny anything, because I would deny it to myself. Now, disposing oneself to do my will forms the passport, The beginning act forms the way that one must cross in it, the way of heaven, holy, divine. Therefore I whisper to the ear of the heart of one who enters into it, forget the earth. Already it is not yours any more. From now on you will see nothing other than heaven. My kingdom has no limits, so your walk will be long. Therefore it is necessary that you hasten your steps with your axe in order to form many ways and so take many of the goods that there are in my kingdom. So the beginning act forms the way, the completing of it forms the train, and I, when I see the train formed, I act as a motor and move it quickly forward. And oh, how beautiful it is, delightful, to pass through these ways that the creature has done in my will. These acts done in my will are centuries that enclose incalculable merits and goods, because there is the divine motor that moves them, which has so much speed that in the minutes it encloses the centuries, and it renders the creature so rich, beautiful and holy as to let us boast before the whole celestial court, pointing her out as the greatest prodigy of its creative art. In addition to this, as the creature forms her act in my divine will, so the veins of the soul empty themselves of what is human, and there flows, I could say, a divine blood that makes felt in substance the divine virtues in the creature, that has the virtue of flowing almost as blood in the same life that animates her creator, that renders them inseparable from each other, so much so that one who wants to find God can find him in his place of honour in the creature, and one who wants to find the creature will find her in the divine centre. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.